everyone, and welcome to the show. My name is Bassem Girgis, as you know. I'm the co-founder of Akina Compounding Pharmacy, where everything we do centers on one core philosophy, which is reflected in our name. It's to do the right thing in the right way for the right person, for the right reasons, at the right time. And in this podcast, we sit down with people in and around healthcare who are pushing boundaries, solving real problems, or simply rethinking how meaningful work gets done. And today, I'm joined by Sindhya Valloppillil, founder and CEO of Skin Dossier. Skin Dossier is an AI-powered precision skin health SaaS solution for retailers, brand, med spas, and dermatology. Sindhya has built and scaled startups, led brands to acquisition, and helped shape how consumers engage with skincare through technology and data. Recently, Cynthia and I connected around the idea of leveraging technology and data to enhance the dermatology patient experience. I knew it was a conversation worth having, and so here we are today. Cynthia, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you on. We're entering new frontiers and new territories with AI driven technology, which a lot of people shy away from versus embracing. And it sounds like you're embracing it as good as anybody can out there today. So to kind of kick things off for our audience and for your audience, can you tell us a little bit more about Skin Dossier and
Sure.
what your vision is behind the company?
Thank you for having me, Bass.
Yeah.
So, my company, Skin Dossier, is an AI enabled precision skin health platform. It is a SaaS solution for retailers, brands, med spas, and also for dermatology. It works like a dermatology analytics API. And the name is Skin Dossier, and it's meaningful in that we provide insights about an individual, either for the individual or their doctor or a med spa. And those insights are based on diagnostics and data. And the way it works is the very first step that consumer or patient will fill out a short 15 question survey. And then the next step is they use their phone for 3D hyperspectral facial imaging. So that has a depth. So it will show things like volume loss here, depth of wrinkles, the type of acne someone might have. We also have a hardware version of this imaging technology that my co-founder built that goes below the surface of the skin to show damage that's not visible to the naked eye, which is really cool. So that's obviously more of an in-office or in med spa clinic experience or even retailer, but the mobile version works pretty well. Then the next step is asking the consumer or patient if they can sync their geolocation. From geolocation, we get a lot of dynamic data from weather, humidity, pollution, wind index, UV index, and then also travel. We can see how much you're traveling, where you're traveling between. And a lot of times, the delta between two places will have a big impact on hair and skin. And also the amount of time you're spending on planes will have an impact on your hair and skin. So that's the geolocation data, dynamic data that we get all that information from. And then the next thing is we ask if the consumer or patient is wearing a wearable device. I am actually really obsessed with all these wearable devices, and I wear an Oura Ring and Apple Watch. So from these kind of wearable devices, we get precise information about, is the person working out? Are they sweating? What's their heart rate when they're working out? Are they stressed? That's a good one because there is a correlation between stress and hair loss and stress and acne and things like that. Stress has a big impact on skin and hair. And then what else? Period tracking, fertility tracking, hormone fluctuations. And then finally, sleep. Sleep also has an impact on the skin and the hair, or lack of it thereof. A lot of people don't sleep that much or have good quality sleep. That quality is tracked by a lot of these wearable devices. So that's the wearable information. And then finally, we have the diagnostics. If a consumer or patient has already done DNA testing, they can upload that raw DNA data to our platform. And within minutes, we analyze it for skin, hair, and skin nutrition traits. And then the next step is blood and urine testing. We don't actually ask the consumer to do any of these tests. If they're already going for their annual physical as you're supposed to, or more, if they're like signed up for Function Health or some of these other home testing programs, then they own that data and they can upload that data to our platform. We analyze it for the skin, hair, and skin nutrition traits. And that's as comprehensive as it gets. Blood, urine, DNA, geolocation, and the wearable data. Because with all of that, we understand an individual's biology, lifestyle, and environment. And all three of these things need to be taken into consideration when you're analyzing someone's health and trying to make recommendations for skin health or general health. So that's our goal. And a real world example of this actually happened to me.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
You have
Uh,
a real example that's collecting all of these wealth of data points, and then what does that ultimately mean at the end
yeah.
of? Yeah.
So I had a dry skin, like irritation, itchy, like patch of skin, and I didn't understand what it was because I take pretty good care of my skin. And I went to the dermatologist because nothing I was doing was working. And the dermatologist thought it was just contact dermatitis, gave me a prescription for a steroid cream. Went home, used it for 10 days, did not improve. Then I went back. Then he was like, oh, something else is going on. Turned out I had a different kind of an allergic reaction, but it could have been a host of other things like an autoimmune disease. But the point is, if he had my DNA data and my blood work, he would have known right off the bat if I had an autoimmune disease instead of then sending me back for lab work and then going back after he gets the lab work results.
Why is that? What would have those revealed, if that's something you can share, that would have gotten us to the root cause much quicker?
So from the blood work alone, a doctor can see if you have, if it's a, an extended panel, if you have an autoimmune disease, right? And if you have an autoimmune disease, then you're more likely to have these kind of skin issues. See? And understanding where I was, in my case, what happened to me is I was applying a vitamin C cream and I was in the sun. And that combination, it's basically a light sensitivity that I had, like an allergic reaction almost, if you will, with that combination of vitamin C, and I was also drinking, grapefruit juice and margaritas. There's a lot of vitamin C and a lot of sun. Isn't that funny? Anyway, but having all this data, it just makes it so easy to diagnose a patient accurately in a very efficient manner. And then similarly, this data can help a consumer when they're shopping online on Sephora.com. Let's say they're allergic to ascorbic acid. Well, the layperson doesn't know that ascorbic acid is also vitamin C and all the different names for it. And they don't know how to filter, how to find the products that they're allergic to and eliminate them from their search. They also don't know what products to use. And if someone has very sensitive skin, if they are prone to hyperpigmentation, then stronger products like, a high concentration of retin A might not be right for them. Similarly, like when they go to the med spa, a lot of the treatments might not be a fit. They might actually aggravate the skin. And knowledge that you have a trait like hyperpigmentation, which most people who are olive complected and or darker, so olive, brown, black, and they are naturally predisposed to hyperpigmentation, which means that you might take good care of your skin and it might be a dormant trait, but you should know that certain things are going to trigger it.
Yeah.
Pregnancy, hormone fluctuations, aggressive treatments, aggressive weather, things like that. So it's that kind of knowledge that allows you to optimize your skin.
Yeah. So this is great information. Now, it would be ideal, of course, to have access, right, to all of this data from all of the different sources that you mentioned before, like geolocation, previous testing results, ideally as comprehensive of a lab panel as possible. Now, help me understand more practically how it works. I would love for this data to be following me around, right? And, if I go to Sephora, I'm able to apply here and make an informed decision. If I'm going to a dermatologist, I'm then taking the same data point in a different setting, in a different application to, let's say, make different decisions, right? But nonetheless, I want all of that data to come together to be analyzed so that we can make the best informed decision for a treatment plan. Um, how does this tool actually accommodate for that?
So right now we are not direct to consumer because I mean that's my frustration. I wish I could do that, but it's a lot of money to target consumers directly, marketing. So for me as a startup founder, bootstrap, taking the SaaS approach and just focusing on that is a lot less, cash intensive.
Got it. Perfect. So,
But
yeah,
yeah, I hope that one day it is scaled to that point because that's how it should be. I mean, that's the whole point of AI.
Yeah.
So for example, I don't know if you're using ChatGPT, but the more information you give ChatGPT about yourself, like whether you're using it for editing your writing or using it for like research, when it knows who you are and how you think, that experience becomes a whole lot better. And that's just how AI is across the board, like Spotify. The more you engage with Spotify, the more it curates better music for you, right? Netflix, same thing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I sort of pictured something, it's an app on my phone that I'm constantly feeding it information from different sources. I'm connecting it to my patient charts at any, healthcare provider that I've ever seen, and I always have geolocation, you know, turned on, so it's tracking my whereabouts and the environment in those places. And so, I kind of want to go back to that, which is the environmental factors, right? The environmental factors. How much data would be required if you're in any given place for any given amount of time? How much data is required, meaning in terms of a time frame, for it to be useful?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, just having so basically, the more data you give it, then the more powerful the experience becomes. But
yeah,
just syncing your location one time, the first minute, it knows where you are. It understands the weather in DC and it knows, the UV index and the humidity and these kind of things that would affect your hair and skin. Yeah, that is enough for this one time experience. But if it's on and the geolocation is dynamic, then it improves with you, with your travel and movement.
so can you describe to the audience what your ideal application for this is? Meaning, who's your ideal customer that can incorporate this SaaS solution into their practice or into
Yeah.
their professional setting?
think, I mean, my dream customer is like a big multinational. We are in talks with a couple
Yeah.
for brands directly, but really it's best with a multinational that has multiple brands, like Estee Lauder or L'Oreal, because it's expensive to sell the technology. Beyond that, retailers, multi-brand retailers like the Sephora's or Targets or Ultas of the world, and med spas, or even the big brands that are in the med spa. So like the Botox owner, the pharma company, AbbVie, right? Yeah. AbbVie could be a customer because really we could take it a step further working with a company like AbbVie or Restylane, the filler company, by allowing the customer to visualize, oh, if I put filler in these areas where I'm losing volume, this is what I would look like. And especially with the use case of filler for lip, it's an art. It's kind of like, and dentistry too, but we're not going to go to dentistry anytime soon. There's so much to do with skin. But these are all experiences that are very like high touch artistry, like applications. And it's not necessarily wrong or right, but it's about pleasing the customer and making them look their best. And it might not be about like even applying filler. Maybe all they need is Botox to paralyze the gum movement a bit.
Yeah.
So their gums are not exposed when they smile rather than putting a lot of lip filler in. Some people just don't understand how bad they can look with a lot of filler. And then once they get it, they look really bad. Then they pay to have it removed.
Yeah, it sounds expensive.
Yeah. So it can be used for that too. But really, an amazing use case that I'm really excited about is dermatology analytics API, applied not just, it could be in office or telehealth, like telemedicine. So companies like Muesli, Hims and Hers, so many of these companies say they're telemedicine, but they're really not. I think we talked about this a bit last time when we spoke. The experience, they call it telemedicine, but it's really just a quiz. There is no interaction between the patient and the company, the pharma company, if you will, or compounding pharmacy, if you will, whatever Hims says they are, the brand. There is no interaction between that patient and a nurse or a doctor. They are just doing a survey. There might be some, chat, like automated chat, and you could be 16 and get Ozempic. It's absurd.
Yeah.
So I think utilizing this kind of platform where you understand what's going on with someone, why did they gain the weight? Yeah. It really is far more insightful. And then when you insert a real telemedicine experience, it becomes far more efficient. It could be it could just be 5 minutes.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I want to eventually circle back to the AI powered analytics specifically for dermatologists. And I'd like to take maybe a real world example so that both the provider and the patient can digest and really understand how this technology has a practical and significant treatment outcome compared to the same exact, let's say, relationship between the dermatologist and the patient without the technology. How the two scenarios look different, you know what I mean? With AI powered analytics and then without it, how does it actually change the final outcome and let's say the personalization of whatever the treatment is? But let's talk about telemedicine a little bit. You mentioned it's not like really a telemedicine.
Yeah, it's not.
So describe to me what you think is a real telemedicine experience compared to what it actually looks like now that we call telemedicine.
I think that um, access to GLP-1s in particular has gone bonkers. And it is like the wild, wild west. You can be 14 and do that survey and get the prescription in less than 10 minutes without any interaction with a physician. That's crazy without any like parental supervision. You might not even be a good fit, like as a patient to be on that medication. And that blows my mind. So I think a good use case would be having a platform, a SaaS platform where that telemedicine physician or nurse sees this is your last, blood work and urine analysis from a reasonable amount of time, like 6 months. So
Yeah.
they understand what's going on with you, like in a snapshot anyway. And they can see what else is going on with you in the way of stress and sleep and, period tracking, all of that. And then decide, okay, you're a suitable candidate for GLP-1 or retin A or whatever it is. And yeah, it's sad that we have all the tools out there right now, but they're not being utilized. And you look at these companies like Muesli, like what's another one? There's Curology. They have gotten enormous amounts of funding and they're just not doing it right. Even One Medical, I'm a One Medical subscriber. They have a lot of primary care physicians that are just not that knowledgeable with respect to pediatrics or, women's health. They're
Yeah.
just, it's
Yeah.
too broad. And I think a platform like this, especially with, on the back end, if you have all this data and the information and the clinical studies to help them connect dots and then understand with research really quickly, yeah, that would be game changing. But
Yeah.
we're not there yet. And then you
I
take it a step further with, customized medicine. A lot of these companies also say that they're offering customized meds to the patients, like Curology. They're not. It's three concentrations of the acne medicine or three concentrations of the retin A for, wrinkles. That's it.
yeah. So they're essentially picking a product based off of your asynchronous form that was submitted. I filled out a handful of these forms in my lifetime on a telemedicine interaction. And I was also very surprised to see how little information is required to determine what the most optimal treatment for the patient is. And as I thought about it some more, it appears as though the telemedicine companies are meeting the minimum legal requirements in order to provide or establish the relationship between the patient and the provider. Those legal requirements are set on a state level. What's the definition of a provider patient relationship? In some states, it could be audio visual interaction. In some states, it could be just that form,
Yeah.
right? Could be a chat. And so it sounds like the goal is like, okay, how can we scale this thing by meeting the minimum requirements? And what that ultimately leads to is suboptimal treatment. It's like you're saying, or like, very inappropriate treatments because we don't really know the patient. And so without the technology that you're talking about, this AI driven technology that can collect a wealth of data points and distill it down into a solution very quickly for the patient. Unless that technology is implemented, there's no way for these telemedicine companies to scale their businesses, right? So I guess how do we solve this? I don't know. Is it very expensive to implement?
No.
How do we solve the solution of allowing them to scale the business and also provide the best possible treatment for a patient? Is that even possible? And what's your vision for that? What can it look like to provide such a convenient service like telemedicine? I can get on my computer or get on my phone and ideally get the treatment that is absolutely appropriate and tailored for the patient with the convenience. Are both possible? And how do we do it?
I think there needs to be an interaction with a physician or nurse and the patient to get any kind of prescription drug. It should not be so easy to just get the drug.
Absolutely.
And then as a part of that, like, what's the point in the physician or nurse and the patient talking for a couple of minutes if you don't understand my blood work, my biology, and all of that? There's no point. What are you making that basis on? There needs to be diagnostics and there needs to be an interaction. Yeah.
Right. So it sounds like there would have to be more participation from both the patient and the provider. And from the patient side, participation in providing more data, right? Taking the time to
Yeah.
the lab work done and input that information into whatever tool can collect that data so that there's visibility to the provider.
Like One Medical, I told you I'm a member of that. So before I came on this trip, I had set up a video appointment with a doctor. And my point was to get some Ambien for my trip so I can adjust and get into work really quickly. And the doctor knew I had not had one of those prescriptions since a year ago, not last month. So clearly there's no addiction problem, right? Because where else am I getting it? And he also had a snapshot of my health from my previous blood work. And that whole meeting was maybe 5 to 10 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
Not even 10 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah. And do you feel like that was appropriate or no?
No, I think that was appropriate because he has all my information, right?
Yeah.
He knows when I last was prescribed it. He knows my general, history.
So if a company like Hims or like Curology, they're very convenience focused, clearly, right? Convenient for them and the and the patient. It's convenient in how to scale it. Now, I guess what's the solution? Are those types of services even possible at that level of convenience for there to be a well-established relationship between the patient and the provider so that the provider really understands the patient and has sufficient information, like in your case, right? It doesn't have to be like a 1 hour meeting, but sufficient information. Is it possible to provide such a convenient service, or do you have to sacrifice getting that information and the data points and really establishing that relationship? Do you have to sacrifice that for the convenience?
Yeah, I don't think it's a sacrifice because if I was misdiagnosed or given the wrong prescription when
Yeah,
I wasn't a candidate for it, right? Then we're going to have some bad outcomes. And then I'm going to have to go back to the doctor. And that's not efficient
right,
or accurate.
right.
It's wasting my time. I might have a bad reaction. So it's about optimizing the experience, and the experience is optimized with information and
Yeah,
engagement with the doctor.
yeah. And that's exactly what Skin Dossier does.
That's what I think all telemedicine and precision health and customized medicine should be doing.
Right. Yeah. And now you're saying now the technology is here
Yeah.
for that. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of finally incorporating it and embedding it into the services or how they provide the service and the product. So let's talk about your dermatology experience for a patient. Let's talk about what it looks like traditionally and then how a dermatology office or clinic can incorporate your technology into their practice. Let's first speak to the dermatologist and then speak to the patient on how it enhances the patient experience as well.
So if a derm clinic had our platform installed, then they could then give a link to the patient, and the patient would fill in all the stuff ahead of that appointment.
Got
and
it.
then the experience is optimized. Alternatively, if this was a direct to consumer experience, which it isn't right now, the patient can walk into the derm office and share their profile like ahead of time. And then the doctor or nurse could see Bassem has these allergies, has autoimmune, whatever, whatever is going on. And then we can understand why you have certain issues.
Yeah. And then so for a dermatologist, is this are they signing up on a membership or is it a
Yeah.
subscription plan?
So for a dermatologist or a clinic or a med spa, it's a license, all software.
Got it. Is there any EHR integration for the dermatologist? How
Yeah,
does
it
that?
could be. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, but if I do if I'm working with a retailer or a brand, there's no EHR, right? Because then it's, yeah, over the counter stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. And then are there specific conditions or disease states within dermatology that this has the most impact or the most utility in terms of either diagnosing or creating a tailored solution for a patient?
Yes, both.
Yeah.
Broadly, it does. So there are a dearth of dermatologists. There are not a lot of dermatologists in rural America. A lot of people don't have access if they don't have insurance, especially in New York. A lot of the dermatologists are cash only. And to
Yeah.
have a appointment, it's $500.
Yeah.
So for a telehealth experience with, a company like Curology, if they upgraded it and did a whole interaction with a doctor and a patient like this, it could be really useful. It's kind of like the GLP-1 thing that we're seeing, right? It's now being marketed as the new metformin longevity drug, if you will.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know who are on it are not they're not obese. They're not even fat. They're just not their optimal weight and they're on it. And they're microdosing it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's like it's what metformin was 10 years ago. It's marketed as a longevity drug and everybody wants it and they aren't going to get it covered by insurance because they're not obese and they don't have diabetes. So they're getting the compounded version,
Yeah. And
microdose.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's great. I mean, I think we have to wait and see all the research, but it seems to be working great for a lot of people I know. And at the end of the day, this country, the pharma companies have run amok and it's a monopoly. And I'm very pro compounding pharmacy. And I think compounding pharmacies are providing access and democratizing these drugs. Number one. Number two, they are oftentimes also customizing the drugs for patients.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for people who are microdosing, maybe they can sell smaller quantities. For people who have nausea, they can, mix it with something to make the nausea symptoms subside. For products like Retin-A, different concentrations and mixing it with a cream. You could do so much, in the compounding realm that you cannot do at scale with a regular pharmacy or a L'Oreal.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to bring that into the conversation specifically because the more I think about what Skin Dossier is capable of, and correct me if I'm wrong or refine this, number one, it can allow us to identify the root cause more efficiently and more effectively and more accurately, right? Because it's taking kind of like what you shared in your own personal experience. If you had more data points that were being analyzed at once, you would have identified that overexposure to vitamin C, for example, was, at the root of this. So diagnosing is one thing, identifying the root cause is one thing, and then creating a solution would be the next step based off of what we identified. And if we're selecting from a limited option of solutions, and what I mean by that is off the shelf solutions, manufactured solutions, commercial solutions, even though we've done a really good job at identifying the root cause, maybe the treatment plan, if it's off the shelf, is still suboptimal because it's not tailored to you and your specific needs. That's where compounding can come in, right? Not in all scenarios, but that's where it can come in. For example, if it's a skin condition with multiple facets of it that need to be treated, like let's say it's an infection with inflammation, for example. You want to treat the inflammation and you also want to treat the infection. You can combine an anti-inflammatory like a corticosteroid, which is what you got, and then an antifungal or antibacterial into one, and you can compound it at the specific strength that's needed, with or without tretinoin, for example, depending on the sensitivity. So when a customized solution is recommended, is that the most optimal application of your technology? Because if we're thinking about combining all different ingredients at different strengths, a lot of providers don't know what the best combinations are out there. Where does a tool like this come in?
In the same way that a physician or nurse would utilize our insights and data, a compounding pharmacy would then get direction from the physician saying, oh, this is how I'd like to treat. I mean, it's the same way that you work with a doctor anyway, not that
Yeah,
different. You're going to
yeah,
get direction from the physician, not me, not the patient. And that's what most compounding pharmacies have anyway, right? They have that kind of relationship already structured for, customized derm products or customized medications.
yeah. And so does Skin Dossier, does it take into account the availability of compounded medications in
No, but that's an extra step. We could add that availability of medications for an API, analytics API. We can ask the patient, okay, what are all the medications you're on? Right? Then you can see that and then use that data to create the best formula that's not going to interact badly with the medications they're on,
yeah.
the drug interactions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that data can be like really insightful and to really get the best treatment option for the patient. Like a dermatology cream, for example, can be so highly customized for a patient's needs, right? But to really pick the optimal combination of ingredients and strengths, so on and so forth, you have to have the right data points
Yeah.
analyzed. So I could see how this could really enhance patient outcomes at the end of the day, which is what we're trying to do. If you can describe your vision, like what's the end goal? If your technology was used in the most ideal situation, what's ultimately the end goal?
Really, it's about diversity and inclusion, right? When you think about clinical studies done by big brands like Estee Lauder and L'Oreal, historically, they've never included people above a certain age, different races of people. And we all respond to ingredients differently, or we have different issues, right? So, personalized, customized products and experiences, like you don't get more personalized than that when you consider someone's genome and
Yeah.
blood work, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is when you buy the right product, you're not throwing it away and wasting it unused. So there's that sustainability angle. And then finally, from an efficacy point of view, when you have an issue, like there are a lot of issues, but a good one is hyperpigmentation. Hyperpigmentation probably, if it's really severe, after an injury at the med spa, like getting a chemical peel or some kind of treatment that was way too strong for you, that triggered hyperpigmentation. Well, in those cases, it may or may not go away after a year or something using topical products. You probably need a prescription strength formula. And understanding that, getting that formula right, that's the opportunity. If you look at the 1% of the population, people like Lindsay Lohan, who suddenly looks great. Well, it's because they're doing a combination of topical products, supplements, and prescription and med spa treatments. Probably also plastic surgery. But affluent people in this country are doing a lot of med spa prescription products, exomes and peptides and NAD and they're also doing infusions.
And do you think they have to go to a number?
No, I don't think you have to do that. But the reality is, if you have certain issues like hyperpigmentation, like acne scarring, acne. So, a lot of rich kids, that's a great example. They don't get acne anymore. You know why? Because they're going to the med spa and they're getting hydrofacials on the regular to clean their pores, or they're getting laser facials to
Yeah.
kill
You know
visits.
what? I really don't see much acne anymore
Yeah,
around.
rich kids don't get acne anymore.
Yeah,
And
people.
so anyway, this market of clinical skincare, clinical meaning clinical is funny. It's a funny word. It just could just mean a higher concentration of actives at the OTC level, but there also is that prescription strength, like med spa or doctor prescribed formula.
Yeah.
And that's going to get a much faster result than the OTC stuff. So
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it.
So this is a question I usually ask very early on in the interview here. How did you get into this in the first place? It sounds like there's a number of different applications for it. Why specifically skincare? And what were you doing before you founded this company?
I have spent a lot of time in the beauty industry, mostly in skincare at the big companies like L'Oreal, Neutrogena, J&J, and then a startup. And ever since I worked at that startup, which got acquired by P&G, it was all startups after that. That's pretty typical. People just love, it's hard to go back to the big corporate life after being at a startup. And then another thing that shaped my interest in this is I come from a doctor family. My parents are both doctors. My brothers are doctors, uncles, aunts, lots of doctors. And because of that, it was always like reading material at my parents' house is like JAMA and New England Medical Journal. And I always heard them talking about stuff. I've always been interested in the science. And skincare is now more driven by science than the BS, the celebrity, hype and things like that. And secondly, technology. So for me, it integrates two things that I'm very excited about, which is tech and science. And it's also now we don't even it's called precision skin health or skin longevity. It is part of the longevity movement when you include diagnostics and technology.
That's amazing. And you're definitely getting ahead of things. And, it sounds like the deficiencies we're seeing in a lot of the larger telemedicine companies, what we hope and what we expect them to do, you're kind of doing much earlier on. It takes a lot of time for larger companies like that to, number one, embrace, new technology. Number two, everybody knows now the pace at which it's moving is unprecedented, right? How fast things are developing. But your day to day now, where are you in your business and what is occupying most of your attention now? Like what's on the horizon for Skin Dossier?
So, one of my frustrations has been fundraising to scale the company. And I think that's because a lot of AI and SaaS investors don't understand the opportunity because they get thrown off by words like skincare and beauty. And meanwhile, the beauty investors do not understand SaaS. Many of them don't even know what the acronym means. And they get scared by AI. So that's the problem. And I think it's probably the same, in the compounding pharmacy and like pharma tech world. There's some people who are just so immersed in the old way of doing things that they reject AI. They just don't, and they get freaked out by telehealth. uh, yeah. And therein lies the opportunity because some people don't want to evolve. Other people don't understand the science part of it, you know, and the regulatory part of it. And you really need all of that. And it's challenging. It's exciting, but challenging.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's kind of two different, very different worlds, which is the healthcare world and then the technology world coming together. There's always been tension there, And then you're specializing even further into the beauty market and skincare. So is a lot of your time spent, providing education to paint that picture and the vision for the future? What does your day to day look like right now?
I do a lot of work keeping the platform as up to date as possible, new trades, more clinical research, making sure the experience is still a good one. These kind of things change rather with new iterations of AI. So there's that piece of it. And then fundraising.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, because of what's going on in the tech ecosystem and how fundraising has become so challenging, there have been inbounds. I have been getting inbounds from some larger companies for an acquisition, and that's been happening with younger companies based on their potential.
Yeah.
And because it's cheaper for, these big conglomerates to acquire than to build it out themselves. They don't know how to build it out. It's cheaper for them to acquire a younger company than wait for it to mature. And after it's raised like private equity funding and all of that, then they're paying a much higher price. I'm exploring that too. And then in addition to that, I also write for Forbes on
Yeah.
these topics.
Yep.
Venture capital innovation, a lot of health tech, telemedicine.
Yeah. Before we started our discussion today, I'd mentioned to you that I came across a few of your articles, which are very interesting. Very quickly, how did you start writing for Forbes?
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
writing for a while, probably the last 13 years.
Yeah.
I started on a friend's like startup community blog, and then from there, Business Insider, TechCrunch. I still write for TechCrunch periodically. Beauty Matter, still write for them.
Yeah.
Fast Company. Then, I guess, based on the traffic that the articles got, then Forbes reached out. So I've
Amazing.
been with Forbes now for a year and a half.
So it's something you're doing very consistently as well.
Yeah, I like it because it's funny, after writing a couple of health tech articles, now I'm getting inbounded by so many companies and, their PR firms.
Yeah.
So I learn a lot through that. Yeah.
Why is it that you're learning a lot? Do you have to do a lot of research?
Yeah, so I don't like reporting. So basically, there's two styles of writing. There's reporting, where you're just saying, oh, OpenAI raised so much money, or they got a new hire, and that's it. That's the whole gist of the article. And then there's feature stories, where you take more of an op ed approach and you do a lot of research and you give the reader your opinions and analysis, but you back it up with research and
Yeah.
insights. Yeah. So that's the approach I like to do, and then I also include a competitive landscape. So if I'm writing about one company, I think that it could be a little misleading. It can also look like you're paid to do that when you're only like, oh, this company is so great. No, you also have to talk about the competitors and what's going on with them. So the reader has a full picture
Yeah.
of
That's
that
awesome.
topic.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I don't want to digress too much from Skin Dossier, but that's really cool that you're also doing that. Sounds like you're staying very busy.
It's like you with your podcast. I'm sure you're learning a lot too.
My gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And I wish, I think I need to create more time to conduct more research on all of the new ideas that are being presented to me through these conversations, right? I've been meeting very fascinating people that are really finding different ways to do things. And right when you think there's a ceiling in any one industry, somebody or something is breaking through it. Like kind of like what you're doing here, right? I'm still trying to like wrap my head around, well, number one, detaching from how things have always worked for a very long time, and then what seems to be the infinite amount of doors that are opening with this new technology, and people like you are just finding very different applications that people haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
And then that's why you're presented with all those challenges. It's like you're trying to explain it to this industry and trying to explain it to this industry, and having the two. And I think, fast forward 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, it's people that were in your shoes and willing to do that and be uncomfortable, before we know it, we're gonna be like, yeah, this is always how things worked. You know what I mean? It's like, no, there's
Yeah.
people like Cynthia that kind of led the way, and the people that she writes about as well. So that's really cool. But yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up here, we do have, I'd say, a big group of dermatologists that will be listening to this. If they're more interested in this technology and incorporating it and implementing it. I know that you mentioned larger beauty companies like Sephora, Ulta, but let's take the dermatology specialty. How can they incorporate this technology, and how do they find you?
They can find me on any of the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram. My email is cynthia@skindossier.com. And they can incorporate it with their telehealth platform, where you have a link. You provide that to the patient ahead of the appointment. If they use Skin Dossier, it would make the whole experience more efficient and accurate.
And what's the learning curve like for a provider to incorporate it? Is it easy to implement?
It's pretty easy to implement. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, everybody, you heard it here. Go check out Skin Dossier and get a little familiar with the disruption that they're causing in the market. And Cynthia, I wish you all of the best and the amazing work that you're
Thank
doing.
you.
Great time.
Likewise. Wish you all the best too. Thanks for having me, Bassem.
It was a pleasure speaking with you today.